Let's kick off. I've worked with many of you before. You'll know that I'm fairly relaxed about it all. So hopefully we can get through it in record time. But the first thing we want to do, of course, is to acknowledge the country on which we stand. So in the spirit of reconciliation, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples who may be with us today. Okay, so why all the rules around Christmas? No, we're not trying to cancel Christmas, but the fact of the matter is, if you're going to be running a work-related Christmas party or end-of-year function, then those events are sufficiently work-related to expose you and your company to a number of fairly concerning issues. They might include things like work health and safety issues, crossing the anti-discrimination laws, and of course, sexual harassment laws. So what kinds of things are we talking about? We kind of know this. If there's any unruly or unsafe behaviour, it's often associated with drinking. And drinking and driving is another one that will often come up at this time of the year. I am sure you can think of half a dozen other work health and safety issues that could go under that heading. It's all well and good until someone gets hit in the face with a unripe avocado. So it's all about making sure that people kind of behave themselves. Anti-discrimination laws, look, it could be inappropriate behaviour towards others who, for example, may not celebrate Christmas or might celebrate it in a different way or just simply have different customs. Many of you will work with workers from overseas, so, you know, have a little sensitivity and be inclusive where you can. Sexual harassment, of course, is inappropriate behaviour of a sexual nature. Inappropriate comments, actions, activities and gifts. This is not the time to be giving the nude calendar to, you know, the young girl in the office. Just be a bit sensitive about those kinds of things. I'm sure that you all have good stories around Christmas parties, and many of them are quite funny and most of them probably harmless. But of course, there's always that serious side to it. And that involves your employer duty of care under the legislation. Now, you've all been operating under the work health and safety legislation for many, many years, so you'll understand that you do have a responsibility to take all reasonable steps to ensure your employees' health and safety and to provide that working environment free from harassment and discrimination. So inappropriate behaviour at staff functions, whether on the work site or off site, is often attributed to good cheer. And as I said, it's all in good fun, but it can often accompany these events and can lead to employers being held liable for that behaviour. So, you know, the young tradie who makes a pass at the young team leader, if that person felt offended or in some other way offended by that behaviour, that may well lead to a problem for you. So it's all about preparation. We know that. Preparation prevents poor performance. I won't say all of the P's. So let's just, you know, in kind of getting legal for a minute, those are your legal responsibilities under the legislation, and you need to be thinking about what you're doing if you're going to be running an end of year function or a Chrissy party or whatever. You need to be thinking about how you're going to manage that event. Doesn't matter how small, just have a think about how you're actually going to run it. So what we want to have a look at, of course, is some preventative tips to limit potential risks. So as I said, the work functions are considered an extension of the workplace. So the same rules apply even in, you know, as they do in the workplace, even if the party is held off site. Now remember, if you're going from a work site to an off-site function, just remember if you've got people wearing uniforms, it might be an idea to change them. After all, in an off-site event, those people will be representing your business. So there's your first rule. The second rule, let's set some definite start and finish times. Your job is not to control the private lives of your staff, but the job is to ensure that whatever activity you sponsor or you provide for your staff is delivered in a way that it manages your risks or your exposure to risks. So set your definite start and finish times. Remind your employees of your sexual harassment, workplace bullying and anti-discrimination policies. And my best advice is, if this time of year, if you don't have those things in place, it's a good time to think about getting them in place, and we can certainly help with that. As I said earlier, be culturally aware and sensitive to the fact that not all staff are going to celebrate Christmas in the same way that you do. They may not celebrate it at all, or they just may do it differently. So respect the diversity of your staff and be inclusive where you can. Invite your overseas employees to suggest activities which would make your event a bit more inclusive. It might be food, it might be some kind of an activity, whatever. Have a think about what you can do. Similarly, if you're going to be doing Secret Santas, remind employees that gifts should be appropriate. This is not an opportunity to embarrass or humiliate people. So be a bit mindful and remind your employees to be a bit mindful if they're pulling strangely shaped things out of the Santa sack. Make sure the venues and the activities are appropriate and don't put people at risk. So it's all well and good to go, race car driving or hang gliding or, whatever, but ensure again that it's inclusive so that it allows everybody to, participate, and that there's either no danger or minimum danger, and that danger might be is properly addressed. As I said, if you're going away somewhere from work, think about whether people wear corporate gear. Again, be mindful if children are present. Oh, I beg your pardon. I've jumped ahead. I'm too excited. There we go. Be especially mindful if children are going to be present. So I know a lot of farms, in particular growers and other businesses, will have family picnics or family Christmas parties. And of course, people are very present in terms of having oversight of those kids. But just make sure that if you are going to have kids present, if it's on site, that there are safe spaces for them, that there's no, trucks or transport around, and that whatever activities you've got going are suitable for those kids. Take some reasonable steps just to ensure that the supply of alcohol is limited and it's only served to those of legal age. So watch out for the teenagers and the young apprentices sneaking around behind the tables looking for half-drunk beers or tinnies of cider. And if alcohol is to be made available, make sure that there's plenty of food and that there's also lots of low or no alcoholic drinks available. And food is your surefire bet. You should always be feeding people. And issue, obviously, the reminder to employees about the dangers of excessive drinking, and, of course, drink driving, the greatest scourge of Christmas. Provide oversight to prevent dodgy behaviour early and just monitor the drinking. I know I'm talking about a lot of alcohol a lot, but sadly it is a bit of a feature sometimes of Australian Christmas parties. So, just kind of get in early. If someone starts to misbehave, get in early, have a little quiet chat to them on the side, ask them to tone it down a bit. And if you can, have somebody who's kind of just keeping an eye on people. We don't want, as I said, we don't want people to be put in a position where they look like they're, the Grinch or that they're cancelling Christmas, but it's a good idea to have some sobers monitoring. And as I said, intoxicated employees should be asked to stop drinking and, if necessary, to leave the function. But again, make sure that they're able to get home safely. And again, ensure employees have made arrangements or you have made arrangements to get employees home safely from an event that might include drinking. Now, of course, public transport, Uber, taxis and possibly Pegasus are not available in those regional areas. Designated drivers are a good idea. And for those non-drinkers, maybe you could even pay them to take on that role for the purpose of the function. So, these are all kind of common sense kind of things, but we know at this time of the year common sense is sometimes in a little short supply. Now, Martin, if we have any questions about this at this stage, I'm really happy to cover those off.
None have come through so far. We've got a hand up from Connie. Connie, do you just want to write your message into the chat function.
Okay, so as I said, just take a common sense approach to it. Do a little planning. So think about it in advance. Who's going to be there? What kind of event you want to have? It's a good time to recognise all the hard work that your workers have put in over the year, and you too, deserve to be acknowledged and deserve to have a bit of downtime with your workers, if you can do it, to celebrate yourselves as employers. So we're hoping that you can organise something. How do we go, Connie? Have we got maybe I should look in there and see if it's in there. If we have a business bus and we supply the transport, is this our responsibility? Yeah, look, it will be your responsibility. If it's your bus and you've agreed to supply transport to those workers, then it's it's a great thing that you do that. Is that I'm assuming that's the question. Is there anything else to that question that you'd like ask Connie? Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the public holidays. This is the kind of boring bit. Look, public holidays, as you probably already know, form part of the National Employment Standards, and they effectively provide an entitlement for all workers, employees under that system, and that's pretty much everybody under that system, to be absent from work on a day or a part day that is designated as a public holiday. The Horticulture Award then supports that through clause 27, where it talks about the pay rates for any employees who are required to work on those days. So all work performed on public holidays will be paid for at the rate of 200% of the ordinary hourly rate. Pardon me, and for casual employees, it's 225%, which of course takes account of the 25% casual loading. So, working on a public holiday, over the coming slides, if I can just get a bit of an indication from people, maybe just a yes, if you are going to be working over the public holidays, it gives me a bit of a size of how many, or gives me a bit of an indication of how many people will have to be, or forced to be, or required to be working on any of these public holidays. So if you don't mind popping something in the chat, that'll just help me out to understand how many people are engaged with this. So as I said, public holidays covered by the NES and then by the awards. Employees, in fact, don't have to work on a public holiday. However, because that entitlement is provided for them under the NES. However, as provided for under the award, an employer can ask an employee to work on a public holiday, provided the request is reasonable. And we'll talk about that reasonableness shortly. So an employee can refuse that request to work if they've got reasonable grounds. And again, we think about this word reasonable, and we can define that reasonably. And any casual or part-time employee who is not ordinarily rostered to work on a public holiday is not going to be paid. So they're not entitled to be paid for the public holiday if they're not rostered to work under any other circumstances. So we all know what the public holidays are. It's just that because we have some folk from interstate, I thought we'd put them all up. So these are not how many you have. These are all just how they operate in different states. So Christmas Eve, interestingly in Queensland, after 6 p.m. is a designated public holiday in Queensland, and so those public holiday rates will apply. Christmas Eve in NT and South Australia, 7 p.m. to 12. So be mindful of that Christmas Eve if you've got people working later. I don't expect too many will, but nonetheless. Obviously, Christmas Day is a national holiday. That's the Sunday. Boxing Day is Monday. And that's obviously a national holiday, including South Australia. They just call it something different. Monday is actually the public holiday for Christmas Day. So when you have a look at that, you'll see what those exclusions are. And then in the NT and WA, there's an extra holiday for Boxing Day. And in South Australia, there's another holiday for Proclamation Day. We then have New Year's Eve, but only in the NT and South Australia in terms of penalty rates. But New Year's Day, where it falls on the Sunday and also where it falls on the Monday. Both of those are designated public holidays. And in Tasmania, lucky you get to go to the Devonport Cup. and 26th of January, Australia Day. So look, you know what all those are. If you need to clarify those in your own state, you can do that. Just Google your public holidays and you'll be able to see what that is. So having a look at these public holiday rates, again, if you have a look at the Horticulture Award salary pay guide, and again, you can Google that, make sure you put 2022 after it because I nearly gave you 1990 rates, I think. But make sure you get the most current one, which was current as of the 11th of November. And these are your public holiday rates. And I've just highlighted those on this one in green. So these are full-time rates. So any full-time, part-time people that you have working, people are on a fixed-term contract, whatever, excluding casuals, this is what you will pay them, $42.76 per hour for working on a public holiday. And then, of course, depending on what classification level they are on, that will go up. So that's your full-time and part-time. For your casuals, of course, we have to incorporate the 25% casual loading into that, but we only incorporate that once. So for a casual worker, it is 21.38 per hour, which is the ordinary rate, plus their 25% casual loading, plus another $21.38 per hour. And that's how we get to the $48.11 per hour public holiday rate for your casual employees. If you've got piece workers and you have to work out what that rate is in order to work out your unit rate, so, you know, per box, per back, per punnet, whatever, you then have to multiply that casual rate by 15%. That's the piecework loading. So your unit rate then needs to be worked on 53.33 per hour. It becomes very expensive to have workers working on those public holidays. There are alternatives. However, for permanent, well, for most people, they're not that beneficial. But that is the substitution of public holidays. So you can substitute certain public holidays by agreement with your employees or single employees. So they can agree to substitute another day for a day that would otherwise be a public holiday. So if you need them to work on Christmas Day or on Boxing Day, and that's a public holiday, they can agree then that they will work that day, but they will then have another day off. And that works in a similar way for anybody working a part day. The assumption there is that that day off is a paid day off, okay? It's not they get another day off if they're a casual and they don't work. It's another paid day off. So the penalty applies one way or the other. And if an employee has that day off, the substituted day, so they have the Monday off for Boxing Day, but they agree to work on the Friday. If you then require them to work on the Friday, then the public holiday rates will apply because that substituted day is now the substituted public holiday. I really hope that that made sense. It can get a little confusing, not only when you're working with those percentages, those large numbers and multiples, but the substitution thing can get a little hairy. And I'm aware that, you know, that sometimes people have been substituted for other days where, you know, perhaps they may not have been rostered to work. That is not the intent of this provision. So have a think about how, if you're going to substitute, be clear about how you're going to manage anything that may arise from that substitution. I'm happy to take questions on that or any other issue that you may want to talk about at this point, because that sums up our Christmas party, our safe and jolly Christmas parties, and our public holidays and our public holiday rates. So I want to take 3 minutes just to talk briefly about Fair Farms, and I want to take just a minute or two to talk about my agenda and Fair Farms' agenda for next year. But I think we can take a few minutes now to take some questions.
There, Donna. There's a question there from Helen. Can you explain the substitution again?
Yes, certainly. Let's go back to that slide. Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay, so if you're going to substitute, so if you're going to require your workers to work on a designated public holiday, you would either pay them the public holiday rate, or with each employee's agreement, agree that you're going to substitute the public holiday on another day. So effectively, they will work that day at the ordinary rate, that is the public holiday, the actual public holiday, but then they will get another day off. Now, the problem with the clause in the award is that it doesn't stipulate that it is a paid day off. But I guarantee you, if there was a dispute about it, the Fair Work Ombudsman would tell you it is. So my question is, it's almost not worth it. You might as well pay your people the public holiday rate on the public holiday that they work, because you are going to have to give them another paid day off. I hope that helps, Helen. Marty, I'm happy to allow people to speak if people would rather just ask a question out loud.
Okay, no worries. I think Helen gave the thumbs up. She's all good
Yeah,
with that one.
I think Melinda. No? Did we have Melinda?
Nothing coming through on my end, Donna.
Okay. Okay, look, if there's no questions, I'll just move on. But certainly, I'm going to give you my contact details. You will have access to this recorded webinar. I just want to talk very briefly about next year. It's going to be a fairly big year. If you haven't already heard, it's GrowCom's 100th anniversary next year. So we're going to be celebrating growers in a whole set of new ways next year. And I mean championing you growers, you guys, for the work that you do for and in the industry and for our, our beautiful fresh food. So all of it's going to be a celebration next year. These webinars will be monthly, and the idea is that we will hold them on the last Wednesday of every month at this time. If people have difficulties with that, we will be recording them and they will be available. We had almost 50 people register for this. There's not quite that many on the basis, I suppose, that it will be recorded. But if you can join us, it would be great, because sometimes those questions pop up when you're hearing the information. So at that point is the best time to ask them. So over the coming year, we'll be doing one of these every month. So keep an eye out for those links. They'll be coming at you. We're also going to be reintroducing what are now the Fair Farms Workplace Essential Workshops. And I know there's more than a dozen of you here that had joined me in the past for those workshops. So what we're going to be focusing on next year is this kind of growing issue around responsible sourcing for markets, access to international markets for Australian growers. And that brings us to things around slavery, interestingly enough. So there's the Modern Slavery Act, and there's a whole heap of activity around the anti-slavery space that we're closely involved with due to the nature of the Fair Farms program. So I'm going to be covering off on that in the workshops next year, what it looks like in horticulture, pardon me, particularly in relation to working with perhaps labour hire companies, working with overseas workers, palm workers and the like. And then, pardon me, we also want to be able to cover hot button issues that are important to you. So we'll be, covering off things like the IR changes that have just happened, and then things that might be of importance to you in your region or to your commodity. So we'll give you plenty of opportunity to raise those issues in a live face-to-face workshop with us next year. These will be coming out all around Australia. The other thing is, of course, conferences. Which will, beg your pardon. Of course, we've always got HortCon. We're going to have another Fair Farms conference next year, probably in September. We will be heading to the Northern Territory and regions for the Northern Territory's Food Futures Conference. So there's a lot of activity and events going on next year that we're going to be flying the Fair Farms banner at. So keep an eye on this space. The last thing I just want to say to people, if you haven't heard of Fair Farms, it is the only Australian developed ethical sourcing legal employment compliance program that has been developed specifically for Australian horticulture employers. It's a simple program to follow. None of this stuff is simple. We're not trying to blow wind here. But anybody who has done fresh care will be familiar with the format of it. It's modelled on that format. You register, you pay online. It's $150 per year. You complete your online self-assessment, which will give you a very clear picture of where you are in regards to those heavy compliant issues right now. It will also then spit you out a training needs analysis, so you know exactly what training you need to address those areas where you may have been less than perfect. Tailored training is available. You can do that through our online modules. They're very reasonably priced. They're $25 each, or you can buy all of them for $300. You can have it face-to-face with, the workplace relations specialist, or we can do it on the phone. There's any number of ways we can do the training with you. We then have third-party independent audits if you're required or want to have those audits done. We have 5 auditing bodies under our belt. So that adds a high level of integrity and independence to our program. And then passing your audit, you are then Fair Farms certified. You can then use that to demonstrate to your buyers that you are fully compliant with all of their responsible sourcing principles, rules, regulations, etc. You can use it to recruit employees. They can have a high level of confidence that you're doing the right thing. And there's a whole range of other benefits to having it for things like if you're applying for grants, government grants, disaster funding and the like. And also, more and more retailers are going to be requiring it further and further down the supply chain. So, if you get in early, it will be a good thing. So that's my little selling point done for the day. I'm certainly happy to talk to anybody at any time about the program, about any things that we've talked about today. Our program manager, Sachin Archit, who is online with us today, is also available. We have a workplace relations specialist, Amanda Higgins, who can help you out with those sticky workplace relations questions. And a great big huge thank you from me, your grower engagement officer, Donna Mogg. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, however you celebrate it, and even if you don't, we are wishing you all peace and joy for a safe, healthy and happy festive season. And thank you so much for attending today.